you finished yourself another one of your amazing games, or at least you think that they're amazing. However, when you're looking at your sales statistics and you're looking at reviews, it doesn't really seem like anyone is A, buying your game, and B, giving good reviews of your game. Maybe there's something wrong with it, or maybe you just haven't marketed enough. There could be a variety of reasons of why your game launch has failed. So in this video, I want to go over some of the main reasons as to why your game may be a failure upon launch and how you can remedy those things in your next game, or simply prevent them if you're watching this while still developing your current one. Before we dive into this video, I quickly want to talk about the concept of failure. Of course, I've titled it maybe a bit clickbaity, but the fact that you've simply released a game onto Steam or whatever other platform, you as an indie developer are not a failure. Maybe your game may have flopped, but the fact that you have simply been able to publish something that people can buy, and even if they don't really enjoy it, you can still show that, hey, I have had the dedication over the past months, ideally, assuming you didn't just acid flip something in one day, to work on a game and to really go through all of those stages through development. So even when watching this video, try not to cry too much, but instead give yourself a good little pat on the back because you have already achieved quite a bit. Now, why would your game fail? The main reason is usually neglected outreach, or basically you don't reach out to enough people, you don't build up enough wish lists, you don't do enough marketing for your game. And this can be probably one of the hardest things to get right as a developer, especially if this is one of your first games, you don't really know yet how this process works. And it's something that we also have. So for us, this is kind of an outreach. I'll just give you a quick plug now so I can do the rest of the video. Wishlist our upcoming game Forge Industry. It's a resource management and automation game, but you can see basically the progress of on this YouTube channel. You can also play a demo of our game on Steam Next Fest in June now, after which we'll probably release our game in the near future after that. So how do you get good outreach? Well, the first thing you should do is try to get good outreach. Of course, you may be like, oh, but I don't have the big budget to spend on marketing or whatever. I don't have ad campaigns, but you can actually do quite a lot. The first thing you need to do is just try. From like day one that you're making your game, have something like a Twitter or have a YouTube, have something, make TikToks, I don't care. Start talking about your game as fast as possible. The moment you have anything to show that makes it unique and not just, you know, oh, look guys, I made this Unity tutorial on YouTube. Look how amazing I am as a game dev. The moment you have something solid of this is what my game's vision is going to be like, try to share it. The more time you have to build up one of those wishlist bases, the more success you have and the better the chances that you'll get enough wish lists. You have a variety of numbers that are also being thrown around if you go and look online on what is the best amount of Steam wish lists. Ideally, if you want to launch a game, you need to get somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 wish lists. That sounds like an immense amount, and it is, don't get me wrong, but through the power of getting maybe 2 good YouTube videos, even just 1 good TikTok where you get 100,000 views, you can usually translate that to already maybe 1,000 wishlist additions. And the second thing is, once that you have actually released your game, get some good reviews as well from actual people who have bought it, because that way Steam will show up your reviews and you can get that very coveted, overwhelmingly positive tag. Now, of course, that's for if your game is already released. What you should also do is find out who are the influencers, basically, but that can be YouTubers, Twitch streamers, anyone really, no matter how big or how small they are, or well, don't go to some average Joe who has 3 subscribers maybe, but what are some similar games in your genre? Find out as many YouTubers as you can. We have an Excel list of about 100 and a bit influencers that we're planning on reaching out to over the next few months when we're getting more and more close to our demo day, to give them early copies, to ask them, hey, do you just want to play it free? And maybe you can, if you do have the budget, set aside a few big names, or bigger names at least, someone with a big following and who is also really into that niche. So for example, we're looking for people who, for example, are pretty big on Factorio or other resource automation games. There's no point in us trying to advertise to some makeup influencer, for example, because there's just no overlap there. It seems quite obvious, but I just figured it was worth a share. The second problem that there may be is that sometimes, this is more for the negative reviews part, is sometimes your scope is too small. I know. I'm a very big advocate on this channel on make your scope as small as possible. And now I'm suddenly being like, oh, your scope is too small. What do I mean by that? Well, basically ties in a bit with some other points that I want to say, which is you're not original enough or there's not really enough content. So the first idea of your scope is too small is simply, oh, my game takes about 20 minutes to play start to finish. In which case, first of all, there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to cater to your platform. How much does your game cost? If your game costs $20 and you have only 1 hour of playtime, that's usually quite hard to justify and not leave your player with a sour taste in their mouth. If it's something like, oh, it's a 2-hour game and it costs $3 or whatever, then it's all right. It's more relative. Or it's, for example, if it's a free game you're doing on itch.io, for example, you'll have different standards. You need to be upfront with your customers, basically your players, about how long is this game gonna be, what are you gonna get for it, and if it's really just something that you threw up together in a weekend, maybe you should give it a bit more polish, you should make it a bit nicer, and just give that little bit of extra content. It really goes a long way in just not feeling like an asset flip. That's something that you'll hear multiple times throughout this video, probably. Because speaking of assets, my third point is that sometimes you're just not original enough. I think the best example I can give is how many Minecraft clones do we have? Do you really think people are lining up outside to go and play the newest Mine Survival Craft Adventure or whatever game that is basically just, I followed this Unity voxel tutorial for world generation and I added a simple FPS controller and now look at that, I have my brand new amazing game and there's nothing new about it. It's the exact same formula, it's maybe with worse graphics, there's worse music, there's worse everything basically. Of course, you've still made something, but this is not something you should sell. This is something that, hey, I wanted to learn more about world generation, for example. I wanted to learn something and tie it up in a ribbon basically by making a small game around it, but it's nothing unique. And it's that uniqueness that is also really needed if you wanna do something cool marketing-wise that will make you stand out. This is, for example, what the influencers are looking for as well. If we go back to our previous point of what makes your game unique. They're already flooded by so many crappy games, whether it's crappy mobile games or crappy indie games by people like us who simply don't know what we're doing really. We need to find a way to stand out, what makes us unique especially. If you don't know that, you should know that from before you make your game really. What is going to be what makes me unique? So the best thing I can give you there is to just have that core idea, have it very marketable ideally, have it very visual, if even better. That's a problem that we have, for example, trying to get it visually sold how great our game is, and just banking on that one. But don't bank on it for too much, because sometimes what I also see with a lot of games that maybe don't really perform that well in the end is they have their unique gimmick, but it's very short-lived. It's something that's cool for maybe 5 minutes, but actually the experience for the player of how it interacts, for example, isn't really amazing. When I was at the game jam earlier, you can see the video somewhere up there, basically every team had about 72 hours to make a game, and of course you need to have some gimmick. However, there were some games that I can think of that I was looking at and I was like, okay, this sounds cool, but one, your implementation maybe isn't the best, because of course it was still a game jam, but it's something that after just a few minutes of playtime, I'm already like, okay, now what? I've had the fun. I think a good example is, I'm sorry if the viewers are watching this, you have, for example, the L-Post game, put up some footage. It's basically just, you have to drag around your mouse very quickly. And the concept is very fun. Oh, you beat everything up with different weapons. But when I was recording that gameplay, I recorded like 4 minutes of gameplay and I was already kind of sick of it by the end, because I was like, well, I'm not doing much. I'm just scrolling with my mouse. These are things that are very good marketing-wise. Like if you just put a 10-second clip of that game on something like TikTok, you'll probably get thousands of views because, hey, it's funny, but actually delivering upon that gimmick and not just having it as a gimmick, but actually having it tie into a whole game and make it consistent is something that can take a lot of effort and will probably take some time. And then lastly, this one is maybe not something that you can really see easily technically, for example, like it's a clone or whatever, but it's a lack of commitment from you, the person who's developing the game. It's very weird, but if you're playing a lot of indie games, you can often see that, oh, there's not really that much care it seems to be given by this indie developer. It seems like they just wanted to push out something. Whereas, you know, why do we play indie games? It's because they do things differently. They don't do it like how the big AAA companies do. They just release it with DLC and season pass and it's riddled with bugs because they just had to ship. No, indie games are usually more a product with a lot of care put into them, commitment, and you can see that, oh, the person who made this game really believed in all of the concepts. They really believed that this was going to be the best experience that they could give to the player. It's very weird to quantify, but if you've played a few indie games, you'll probably know some game that fits this description of where maybe it just feels a bit too quickly done, or Another example is, all of those early access games that suddenly die out once they've had some sales and, well, they maybe do one update a month or whatever, or a year, where they just say that, hey, we're working on cool stuff, but don't actually deliver. This is something that, especially in reviews, you'll see very often, like, oh, the developer has abandoned this game, don't buy it anymore. That's something that we want to avoid. Have that commitment towards your game, because if you're gonna do this as an actual profession, and especially if you're gonna have the audacity in the end to ask people to pay for whatever you're working on, the thing you should be doing is giving them an actual experience and giving them your full dedication. So, quick summary again. First thing is neglected outreach. Try to start your marketing from day one, because if nobody knows about your game, nobody will buy your game, nobody will even review your game, and it'll just be very sad. Second thing is that your scope is too small. I always say small scope is best, but still make sure that you have some original stuff and make sure that there's enough depth and things to do in your game. Don't just have 2 missions and that's it. The third issue I see is that most of the games aren't original enough. Really, from day one, before you even start developing your game, when it's just an idea, you should already know that this specific mechanic is gonna well, maybe not revolutionize, but really change the way that my game genre is perceived. And don't just clone something. If you want to clone something, that's fine if you want to learn how it works, but always find that something special that you can think about that makes you unique and put it in your game. Don't focus too much on your gimmicks. Try to find things that are actually fun to play, instead of just being like, oh, this could sound cool, let's make the whole game around it, but never really test if it's actually fun to play. And then lastly, all the work you do, especially if you want to charge money for it, put in your effort. People will notice if you don't put in your effort, and it's just simply sad for everyone to have a game where you can clearly see the developer's lack of commitment on their side. So, have you done any postmortems of your game? Have you released maybe even and something didn't go great? Let me know in the comments down below what you probably experienced, or even if you experienced something completely different apart from the things that I mentioned in this video. I always love to hear about you guys. It really gives me that community feeling that I'm grateful for. And apart from that, if you're new here, we make game developer related content like this. It's a mix of, these lists of where we go over some tips and tricks, or as well as our own devlogs and just some real life vlogs where we go and visit the gaming scene throughout Belgium and the world. If that's something that interests you, be sure to subscribe and also leave a like, as it really helps us out and it's a win-win for both of us, as well as you'll get this amazing content. That's all I have for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.